Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Real View podcast. I am your host, Allison Wiley. Joining me today is Stuart Siegel. He is our special guest and is the president and CEO at Engel & Volkers Americas. He joined the company in 2014 and successfully heads many of their offices in North and Central America. And we're going to get into all that he does. He has an extensive international expertise and decades of management experience in luxury real estate, lifestyle, and hospitality industries. He has just been a leader in this industry, has numerous accolades, has really grown his career and his business. And we're going to get all into that. And he's joining us today to talk about this idea of the silver tsunami, which I also think is just such a fun phrase to say. But before we get started in that, Stuart, I would like to hear a little bit more about you. Could you tell us about you and your career history and what's led you to where you are today?
Thank you, Allison, for having me. And thank you for giving Engel & Volkers an opportunity to share insights into your podcast.
Yes.
So I'm embarrassed to say, almost 45 years of experience in various luxury-related lifestyle businesses and industries. I helped launch and was CEO of Sotheby's International Realty. And I am the fellow who organized the sale of Sotheby's to become part at that time of Ascendant, then Realogy. And after the transaction, stayed with Realogy, and then went to work for a variety of really interesting real estate, unbrokerage related assignments. When we sold Sotheby's, I was absolutely adamant that I would never, ever be back in brokerage again. And look at where I've been the last 11 years.
Isn't that funny how that works out? The thing that, you say it's never going to happen again, and then life somehow comes full circle, right?
I kind of personify the old joke about real estate brokers. You know what that is?
No, tell me.
Real estate brokers never die. They just become listless.
I love that. No, it's so true. And congratulations on your new role as president and CEO. And what an amazing accomplishment. Tell us a little bit about what you all do at Engel & Volkers and a little bit of your role in what you all get.
Here at Engel & Volkers, will be 50 years old as a brand in 2 years. And we are basically the Americas group for a global luxury real estate brand started by a good friend of mine, Christian Volkers. As a little bit side story, Christian and Engel & Volkers was the very first affiliate company Sotheby's ever had.
Wow.
Yeah, and Christian and I were young entrepreneurs who basically didn't know what we were doing. And because of that, we kind of gravitated towards one another, became really good friends, and built our businesses in parallel. After I sold Sotheby's, I lived in Europe and saw the amazing network and platform and visibility that the brand had throughout the European continent. And back in 2014, Christian asked me if I would come in and work with him, work with a very talented CEO who had been hired at that time, and help get the brand best established here. So we are part of this 50-year-old history. And we are a brand that is very proud not only of our legacy, not only of being European, but of a brand that has focused a core part of our DNA on collaboration, culture, and community. That is our unique value proposition in the market. We have the most collaborative group of franchisees you can imagine. Our business, just to correct a little bit of a nuance, is we are a franchisor and we sell franchises. And our job is to, as I keep saying, is to empower our franchisees to be extraordinary business owners, to be very effective in talent attraction and retention, and to be ambassadors for what is a brand that we're all very proud of.
Absolutely. I think that's really great. And thanks for sharing a little bit more about what you guys all do. It sounds like you've built, an amazing thing there in your company, and that they're so lucky to have you as the captain of the ship.
Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. And it also just sounds like you're the perfect person to have on. I mean, I wish we had so much longer to discuss today, because I would love to pick your brain on everything that's going on in the industry. And, you've been able to witness so much throughout the course of your career.
Yeah. Yeah. Allison, one of the things we like, and I like saying, is that, the real estate industry is an industry that's chronically in change, and it's chronically being challenged in ways that sometimes we see the challenge coming and other ways we don't. But it's inescapable that really well-trained real estate professionals will always have a role in the home purchasing and selling process. And people will always be buying and selling homes. It's full stop. I can tell you, I remember when the internet was the death of the real estate business. Then I could tell you when iBuying or e-buying was the death. I'd like to joke that I've been invited to real estate funerals several times, never got to see the body. We are a nimble, smart, client-focused business and industry.
No, I love that you've said that, especially in the climate, and coming off of what we experienced in 2024 with, NAR settlement and, things changing, or practice changes going into place, and things like that. And I think it has left, some agents feeling a little unsure, unsettled, or they're not really, feeling secure in what they're doing. So, thank you for saying that. And I appreciate so much of your confidence in this industry, and you being able to say, hey, we're not going anywhere. We've survived, many different eras and times of change before, and we'll adapt and evolve, as the times do. And I think that that's key.
As the times and expertise and other client-driven needs.
Yeah. So what are you kind of experiencing in the climate today? And you explained a little bit from the realtor side of what you're seeing and expecting. What are some of those things you're seeing from the client side, from the consumer side, maybe, that is new or interesting, or what's your experience with that?
This is a narrow lens because it's through our firm and through what I read and other friends and colleagues in the industry. We call our real estate folks, our salespeople and agents, we call them advisors. Mm. And we do that not to be different, but we do it because it doubles down on a very important concept that in today's market, today's environment, we have to be more than transactional. We have to be more than here's the price, here's the bid, here's the counter, close, we're done. So we like calling our folks advisors because we really support the notion that you're in a relationship advisory business, which exists either in anticipation of a closing or a transaction or after a transaction. It's an infinite loop to that concept. So I think what's really good in our business, customers and clients are looking for is that advisory role in their real estate broker.
Yeah.
When I started in the business, real estate agents they held all the data. They held all the information. I used to laugh, to be a really good real estate broker, you need 3 qualities. You need to be able to drive, look at your listing cards, and talk on a cell phone at the same time. Those days have changed. We don't control data. That's fine. But what we do have the ability to do is curate data. We don't control pricing, but we have the ability to influence pricing based on data. So that the role of the broker is this one of an advisor to the transaction.
I think that's such a great descriptive word for it, a different vocabulary. I think that describes what we do so much better than just an agent or, a real estate professional. I think that really shows it's a better descriptive word that shows, our role in the process and what we're promising to do for our clients. And it puts you kind of on that same level as other advisors you have in your life. I mean, financial advisors, legal advisors. I think it puts us right up there with that.
Yeah. And the other thing it does is it gives you and we try and teach this, gives you the ability to assemble a non-real estate team behind you to help your clients. It's more than just somebody who can do the mortgage. It's more than somebody for the home inspection. Somebody who might understand wealth management. It's somebody who might understand other lifestyle driven or financial driven needs. And you're the go-to person. You're kind of the GC for that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the connector for everything. You need, a plumber, you need an inspector, you need, a roof, person.
Yeah, but it transcends just the bricks and mortar and the dirt.
Yeah. Yeah. And through those connections, that's what you're able to kind of offer to your clients beyond just what happens in the home. And you also talked about, the lifespan of working with those clients and that it goes beyond just closing table. And once that's done and everyone goes home and that what happens after that. Talk to us a little bit about your approach and your mindset when it comes to how we should be working with our clients once the transaction is.
There are times that I like to say the relationship begins after the closing. And it really proved true, Allison, during COVID, when there weren't transactions, but there were relationships that were filling the days of our advisors. And it takes the kind of, did you make a bid? Do you want to go to an open house off the table? And kind of normalizes the relationship with the client. So you're checking in because the client may like a certain architectural style and you saw a house of that style. Pick up the phone, send a chat, send a WhatsApp. Hey, did you see this house museum or whatever? It's a way that you create, in marketers' terms, a peer relationship with your customer and client. And then guess what? When the next transaction comes, you're not called, hey, take my listing. You're called, what do you think? Should I? Is this the right time?
That advisor, right? That comes back to being that.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's super important and spending time on that post transaction bonding, growing that, nurturing it, watering it, like you would do flower plant. I think it's so important, and it's another great way that we can build those relationships that are going to stay with us, throughout the course of our career. I want to talk a little bit, and you mentioned, you do work in the global, space. What are you seeing from that side of things in a global perspective from what's out there in current status?
I think globally, there is, to use an Italian phrase, there's a lot of agita. That means nervousness. The European financial markets, the European macroeconomic markets are not nearly as robust and healthy as we are in the US. So there's concern about that. There's concern about the economic stability or impacts that are the new administration, again, not about politics, but about initiatives and how does that play out in the global arena. Our sector in the market is somewhat resilient. So we're seeing a lot of liquidity in our markets. A lot of people have done very well in the equities markets, took some of those gains and looking to put it in real estate. If you look at the number of high 7, 8, and 9-figure deals, those are pretty stable. Now, that's not the entire company, but we have a very high average price, and we find that we're not quite as handcuffed by quote unquote interest rates. They play a role, but they don't define the transaction. We're lucky in that regard, that's our sector.
Interesting. So these people who are investing in our housing market, they're not seeing that as a factor. They're saying this is a great investment for me, and this is something that I'm going to do.
Well, it depends. I mean, if an environment, a lot, I would say, I don't know the exact percentage, but intuitively, 65, 70% of our transactions are lifestyle driven. I want to have a home in Aspen.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a flat, a pied-à-terre in New York City. That's a lifestyle decision. And what that means is, so maybe the pied-à-terre is 1 bedroom, not 2. So we're looking at this idea that the U.S. represents stability, represents transparency, represents safe harbor.
And they see it as a great investment, it sounds like.
Well, I think, I shy away from investment because we sell residential real estate. I think, what they do see is the ability to know that their dollar or their purchase is more protected here than it could be, less at risk than it could be in other markets.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense, and that's good. That's good to know. That's good to know that there's still that interest and that feeling out there that this is a safe move for some people. That's very interesting. So tell us a little more about this lifestyle driven client, what they're looking for. You mentioned some descriptors just now, and location and number of bedrooms. Talk to us about these clients and kind of how they're different or maybe unique from other clients that we might be working with.
Well, as I said, I think they're unique because they have very strong purchase power. They're unique because many of them, this is not the largest asset they will own. They're unique because in many instances, they've experienced the market that they buy in before they buy, whether it's renting, vacationing. So that's our resort-driven, our destination markets. And in our core sort of primary residential markets, I think the most important thing buyers want right now is to true up their sense of affordability with quality.
And finding that kind of perfect balance between the two.
Yes.
Yeah. And is that possible in today's world? Is that these two can exist?
It is. I think it is. I think, new development gives you that opportunity. I think if you're in urban markets, returning to urban centers does. It's the counterintuitive thinking of what COVID did. Where people fled from is an interesting place that people are returning to now.
Mm-hmm. And I have seen many economists kind of predict that we will see that influx back into those urban areas, and that will happen.
And you're starting also to see conversion of commercial to residential, which is also giving dynamic life. You're looking at people thinking twice about going into some markets because of climatic risk, and either inability or inappropriate or overly expensive insurance, or fear of disruption to lifestyle, to living, not lifestyle, to living.
Yep.
So I think there are a lot of really interesting dynamics that are kind of creating a reverse trend.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to play out. I mean, as we witness, natural disasters, coming up more, and you mentioned some of those insurances being an issue, and some places now not even being able to offer insurance or won't offer it. I mean, I think that's going to be really interesting.
I heard somebody say, it was really interesting. It was one of our clients who basically said, and this client wasn't being arrogant, he wasn't being rude. What he basically said was, if I chose to, I could write a check to rebuild my house.
Wow.
I'm not sure I have the internal constitution to go through another loss.
Yep.
And he wasn't being rude or anything.
No.
It was just a real interesting to show how impacted he was. This was somebody on the west side of LA.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. And at that point, it doesn't come down to the money aspect of it. It comes down to, how can I go through another tragedy again?
And then there are those of our clients who are really focusing on, how do I rebuild my life? How do I afford to do that? So, there are these external factors that are influencing so many decisions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's something to keep an eye on too. Be interesting to see how it plays out as things seem to get more and more extreme, and we're hearing these, situations happening more and more. And what are people going to do? It's absolutely something that anyone looking to move into those areas are going to have to think about. What do you think, as far as for our agents and our realtors out there, the best way that they can kind of prepare themselves to work in this arena, to work with these types of clients? What are some of the things that our realtors can do if they want to make this a part of their strategy?
I think one of the most important things is understand your market and don't overextend yourself. Start with a narrow submarket specialization. Become the expert, the go-to person, and start to then think about profiles of buyers that you see who are coming, or profiles of buyers that you think might be well suited to go. But I think it starts with the dirt.
Yep, just start at the basics, start at ground level, and kind of take it from there. Are there any designations or education that you would recommend for some of our individuals or our realtors, that they should pursue just from an educational standpoint?
I'm not the best person to ask that because we have such a robust proprietary or internal education designation system that we're able to train our advisors very effectively.
Yeah. And I'm sure, a simple Google search would be able to pop up some of that information. So definitely check that out. If you guys listening are curious, explore some of that. What about how to focus on this group and cater to some of the other buyers that are out there? Is there a good strategy that you would recommend? How much time should I spend on this? How much time should I spend on that? Is it more so just honing in on point?
If I have to provide a formula like that, you may not be in the right business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's this idea that I think the most important thing is building your network. Figure out your submarket specialization and build a network. Build a network of friends, family, acquaintances. It's the old school. It's all blocking and tackling. And try and start to align that network with where you become the submarket specialist, or align your submarket specialization because of where your network is.
Yep. No, I think that's a great place to kind of focus on. And I agree with you. If you're already thinking, oh, well, this amount of time I'm going to spend on this, I'm going to spend on this. I think from what you were saying, it's more so focus on what you're really good at, find your expertise, and kind of just hone in on that and get started in that way.
Absolutely. And have lots and lots of friends and resources in the industry. That's also an important part of the network. May not be people in your company, people in your brand, but that's how you really get traction.
Is that kind of what found? Because I know in hearing your story and a little bit of what really made big part of what's led you to such a successful career has been, those networks. And I knew, and this guy was my friend. And was that kind of what you found too throughout your career? Was those?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, I've built a network now, having been at this, where I have a pretty good Rolodex. Database.
I still like the term Rolodex personally, but yeah.
but seriously, it's really, and people who are in the business a long time are usually one phone call away from finding out where the answer rests.
I love that. Well, I think that's such a great way to kind of sum up our conversation here today. And this has been so intriguing and so interesting. And as I mentioned, I wish I had more time, so I would love to dive into so much more with you and hear a little bit more about your perspective and your knowledge and insights. But I think this was so fantastic. And I want to thank you again, Stuart, so much for coming on and sharing a little bit more with me today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. And to all of our listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back with you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.